Welcome to the Adventures in Learning podcast. I'm your host, Dr. Diane, and today we are going to take a deep dive into all things ocean. We're going to be talking to Jen Kennedy, who is Executive Director and founder of the Blue Ocean Society, and I am so excited for you to hear about the amazing work that they are doing up here in New England. Wonder, curiosity, connection. Where will your adventures take you? I'm Dr. Diane, and thank you for joining me on today's episode of Adventures in Learning. Jen, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me. Excited to be here.
I'm so happy you're here. I'm hoping maybe before we start, take a moment just to familiarize people with what you do with the Blue Ocean Society.
Yeah, so I'm our executive director and co-founder, and we were formed in 2001, so we're about to celebrate our 25th anniversary.
Congratulations.
Thank you. Our mission is to protect marine life in the Gulf of Maine, and we do that through research, education, and inspiring action. So we really got our start doing whale research out in an area that not many other people were studying, an area called Jeffreys Ledge out in the North Atlantic Ocean. But then we really wanted to get that whale research information to people that might want to protect whales and inspire them to protect whales and other marine life. So soon after we started our research program, we started doing beach cleanups, getting community members involved in cleaning up local beaches, but recording what they found so we can get an idea of where the big problems are is in terms of litter on our beaches, and doing education programs. We actually have a life-size inflatable fin whale that we bring to schools throughout New England that kids can actually go inside and see how big these animals really are. And we also have a small education facility down in Hampton Beach, New Hampshire, where we have like touch tanks and exhibits on the ocean and ways to protect it.
That's really exciting. So how did you go about founding something like this? What led you to that? Because most people don't wake up and say, I'm going to found the Blue Ocean Society.
Yeah, we were young and naive and didn't realize how much work it was going to be, I think. So Diana, our co-founder, and I, we actually met doing a whale research internship, and it was a great organization. It's an organization that doesn't exist anymore. But one of the things we found frustrating when we were there was the organization was doing a lot of really cool research, but we didn't really see how it was getting out to the public. And so that was one thing. The other thing is we were both working on whale watch boats in New Hampshire and collecting data on the whales that we saw, but giving it to this organization and sharing it with others that didn't really have time to do much with it because they had their own data backlog. So we saw a need for a couple of things. One is to, get information out about this really crucial whale habitat, but also to inspire people to want to protect it. And when we were both working for whale watches, they used to send us out to schools sometimes. Like if school was going to do a whale watch, we might go to the school beforehand and just talk to the kids about what to expect and things like that. And I remember one of the first school programs we did, we went to a town that was not even an hour from the ocean. And I said, well, raise your hands. Who's been on a boat before? And only about a quarter of the kids had been on a boat. Most of them had not even been to the ocean at all. So it really inspired us to want to bring the ocean to people and just teach them about their impacts. And so we kind of thought it was going to be, a little side hobby. And eventually we've had so much demand and it's just grown into this full-time thing for both of us. So.
Well, it's absolutely amazing. And I know that you do so much work both on your own and in partnership with other organizations. Mm-hmm. Maybe let's start with whales and we can go from there. What brought you to fall in love with whales and what kinds of things have you learned about whales over the 25 years you've been doing this?
Yeah, it's kind of crazy because I'm from Rochester, New York, so nowhere near the ocean. But for some reason, I always loved the water. I grew up on Lake Ontario, so boating and stuff like that. So I was always more on the water than out if I could be. And for some reason, just always had an interest in whales. Like I remember getting like Greenpeace newsletters and stuff like that and just was always fascinated by them. So when I was about to graduate from college, one of the things I did was apply to this whale research internship and was like, okay, if this is where I want to go, let's explore that, and started working on a whale watch boat and was just hooked because I was also on a boat on the water looking at these magnificent animals. It's amazing. So, and as far as what we've learned, it's been interesting now because we actually started our research in the late 90s. And so we have this really long-term data set. And Diana puts together reports every year and starts looking at trends and things like that. And, like one thing we've seen is the whales are moving closer to shore, following prey that's closer to shore, which puts them more at risk for human, things like vessel strikes or entanglement in fishing gear. But you might know we can actually tell a lot of the whales apart by their natural markings. So like humpback whales, for example, when they dive down on the underside of their tail, there's a marking that's anywhere from all black to all white or somewhere in between. And it's just like a whale's fingerprint. We can use that to tell the whales apart. So they also have differently shaped dorsal fins, and sometimes they have scars from either natural or human threats. And so there's a lot of whales that we see year after year. When we see a whale out on a whale watch or on a research trip, we take a photo of it, we write down its location, and then we can kind of track it over time just based on photographs, not using tags or anything. So, for example, there's a whale named Pinball who we know was born in 1989. She's brought several calves up to our area. And so not only are we able to kind of track Pinball, but also her calves over time, where they might go as they live their lives, where Pinball's feeding, what habitats are important, possibly what kind of things they're feeding on. We can learn all kinds of information just based on these photo identification studies.
That's really cool. And as you're doing these photo identification studies and you're going out on the water and you're paying attention to the habitat, you mentioned that whales are coming more inland. What are some of the challenges that are being brought to bear on them in terms of their survival?
Yeah, I mean, worldwide and with pretty much all whale species, the biggest threats are entanglement in fishing gear and getting hit by vessels. So obviously, the closer you are to shore, the closer you are to any of those things. And then there's also other threats like a warming ocean, as the Gulf of Maine is one of the fastest warming bodies of water in the world. And as the water warms, the prey that the whales feed on and other marine life feed on are shifting in different directions. So, for example, the North Atlantic right whale is a whale that spends a lot of time up in the Gulf of Maine in the summer. And in 2017, because of shifts in their prey, North Atlantic right whales moved up to this area of Canada where they'd never been before. And because they'd never been there before, there was not really any restrictions on fishing in those areas to protect whales. And a number of whales got entangled because they were driven there by a shift in their prey. People didn't expect them there. And then, it was devastating for the whales that only have less than 400 left in the world. So
I was going to say they're super endangered.
Yeah. So, and then there's other things like, marine pollution, like the plastics that are out in the ocean and things like that, which can have cascading effects up the food chain, ocean noise, which is a little bit harder to pin down. But the good thing is there's, lots of scientists out there doing great work to try to learn more about whales, try to inform policymakers, working with fishermen to try to find, make compromises and develop new gear technologies that are less likely to harm whales. So there's a lot of good work being done out there that gives us hope.
And you've been doing a lot of work in that education realm, both in education and policy. And can you describe a little bit about some of the things that you all have taken on and what you're doing?
Yeah. So as I mentioned, I think we have our inflatable whale that we bring to schools. And that actually, we've had it from little tiny kids all the way up to college age kids and adults. And everybody's just so fascinated by it. It's a model of a fin whale, which is one of the species we have pretty commonly out here in our area. And they're also an endangered species, the second largest animal on the planet. So it's a great teaching tool. But in that one, we bring around and do kind of more assembly programs because it's usually the whole school wants to go inside the whale. But we've also been developing more classroom programs just so we can have those, like, I guess, more interpersonal connections with the students and spend a little more time with them and learning more detailed things. So we have some marine debris programs where we do like different activities with, like, for example, microplastics. Like we do some microplastic studies on the beach, and we have kits that we bring into classrooms and kind of model that and have the students kind of be scientists. We've actually just started a new marine debris art program. So where we've collected marine debris, litter from the beaches, washed it, and then bring it into schools. Or we did one with a local library a couple weeks ago, and then talk about the trash and where it comes from, and then people make art out of it. So then we can kind of have that conversation about how it would be great if things were more circular. You make stuff, you recycle it, and it actually gets turned into something else as opposed to landfilled. So.
I really love that. And I think you just hit on something that's incredibly important. Often problems like microplastics or death of species, the endangerment of species feel overwhelming to us as humans, and we don't know what to do about it. And it sounds like you're breaking some of this down so that you're giving people real significant steps they can take to start to make a difference.
Yeah, we're trying to. Like if we're in schools, it's basic things like try to pack your lunch in reusable containers instead of bringing, a single chip bag every day. With adults, we're, talking about the importance of just like, especially being active, voting, contacting your representatives when there's stuff that you don't like, because if they don't hear from you, they don't know what people are concerned about. So, and then simple things like, we see a lot of trash on the road and on the beaches that's just come from when people don't put a lid on their trash can on trash day and it's windy out or rainy and stuff blows out into the road and it can end up on the beaches and in the ocean.
And you all do cleanups that started, as I gather, it started with Earth Day many, many years ago, and it's become a monthly thing at this point, or is it more than monthly?
Yeah, we do monthly cleanups that are open to the public, but we have a number of other cleanup programs. So we actually just went through our 2025 data and we did 335 cleanups just in 1 year. So almost one per day. But we have an Adopt a Beach program where groups can choose to adopt a site. We give them all the tools and training, and they go out and do the beach cleanup once a month. We ask for a year commitment, and then while they're out on the beach, they're recording what they're finding. So we get all that data. So it's not, we only have 7 staff, so we couldn't do 300 cleanups by ourselves. But having all these groups involved, we also have a lot of business groups and like scout troops and things like that that'll do one-time cleanups. And they're all not only making the beach cleaner and safer for wildlife and people, but collecting all this data. So we know, I think it was 140,000 pieces of litter were picked up by volunteers last year. And then we can look at what types of litter were most prevalent. And then we actually take all the data and use it in our education programs, but also reports go to the towns where we do the cleanups and to the state and to up to the federal level as well. We talk to our congressional representatives and talk to them about what's going on. We'll sometimes work with other organizations to go down to DC and talk about this data and kind of advocate. So it's really helpful in doing that.
So I was going to ask, because I'm a geek and I'm concerned, I'm very interested in this. What have you learned from the data? And based on what you've learned, what would be the steps that you'd want to see taken?
Yeah. A few years ago, one example is we were finding a lot of plastic straws on the beach. So we started a Skip the Straw campaign, and we're reaching out with local restaurants, asking them to just offer straws on demand as opposed to just handing them out. We're actually finding less straws now, which is great. One of the things we're finding a lot, in 2018, we changed our data card. So we got a little bit more detailed in our data collection, and we were recording the smaller pieces of plastic we find in foam. And as soon as we did that, so cigarette butts worldwide are the number one litter item on beaches, and it is in New Hampshire, but we have different categories of small plastic on our data card now, and if you totaled up all the plastics we find, it would far outnumber the cigarette butts that we're finding on our beaches. So we're basically seeing, the results of, litter ending up and then breaking up into smaller pieces when it's out in the environment. We also do microplastics research and are finding when we're doing microplastic sampling. So microplastics are like small plastics less than 5 millimeters in size. And mostly what we're finding on our beaches is foam. So like polystyrene from foam packaging or foam coolers or whatever. Some beaches in other parts of the world, they find a lot more plastic fragments. So it's kind of interesting to compare that. So based as a result of that, that's one thing I talk about a lot when we're doing educational presentations is, try to buy things with less packaging, like put a lid on your trash can, because I bet a lot of that foam is stuff that is blowing out into the streets, on garbage day and stuff like that. So
that makes a lot of sense. And as you're thinking about ways to get kids and families interested and partnering in protecting the ocean and protecting the beach, what would be some things that you would tell them? Because, of course, just like you didn't grow up near the beach, not everybody lives near a beach.
Right.
But we all do live upstream or downstream from a source of water. What can we do to help?
Yeah, I mean, obviously back to the putting a lid on your trash can, but using, even if everybody just stopped using so much single-use plastic, that would make a huge difference in this problem. Our data last year showed that 40% of what we picked up was single-use disposable plastic. So things like one-time use water bottles, plastic straws, plastic bags. 41% of what we found had a reusable alternative somewhere. So it's just kind of making that conscious choice. Even if you picked one thing and said, when I go to Dunkin' Donuts, I'm going to bring my own mug every day, for the rest of my life. That's going to make a huge difference, even if a few people do that, as opposed to getting a new cup every time. And then you can do a cleanup really wherever you are. Because like you said, the ocean's downstream, and any trash that's out there is going to be impacting all kinds of life, whether it's marine life or your local birds or, raccoons or whatever. And so that's one of the things we've been doing a little more of, is working more within watersheds and trying to do cleanups and education further up the watershed, just because that makes our job down easier at the beach. If we were cleaning up further upstream, there's less for us to pick up eventually. There was this fantastic app called Marine Debris Tracker. So if anybody wants to participate in beach cleanups, you can download this app. Again, it's Marine Debris Tracker, and you can actually contribute to our data on there. So even if you're, somewhere up in New Hampshire, you want to do a cleanup at your local lake, if you download this app, you sign in and it says, what list do you want to use? And you click on our logo. It brings up basically our same beach cleanup data card. When you submit the data, it goes right into our database. So it's helping us learn about things going on in different parts of the world. So
what a great way to get engaged with citizen science, even if you can't make it to the beach for one of the cleanups.
Yeah. Actually, one other thing I want to mention too, as far as like groups and families and things, we do microplastics sampling on beaches in New Hampshire. And one of our staff has developed this great microplastics toolkit. So if you want to do the same thing, say you live on a beach or you have a camp or something and you want to sample for microplastics, we have all the instructions and a supply list and can help you get started. And if you want to submit data to us, that's going to help, because we'll be able to compare, the microplastics found at different sites and look at sources and things like that.
Well, I love it when you start getting into hands-on science like that with kids, because it's one thing to see it, to see it on TV, to see it on the internet, to hear about it. It's another thing to actually get your hands dirty and do something.
Yep. Yeah, it's really fun when we do beach cleanups with kids, because it's just like a giant scavenger hunt. They're always amazed at what they find.
And you mentioned that you're actually repurposing some of this debris into art. And I know when I heard you speak, you actually had some images from that, and you had talked a little bit about it. Can you tell us a little bit about the art program and how people are using?
Yeah, we actually just started it a few weeks ago, so it's been development for a while. But yeah, people in the last one, they basically made a lot of different mosaics and just kind of put the trash together in colorful different ways. So it was like their own kind of expression of of what their creativity. So we do have a large grant project that we're working on with a number of partners. One is the Center for Coastal Studies down in Provincetown, and they've done a lot of work working with artists. They actually have kind of a trash library that artists can come and say, oh, like I'm looking for a bunch of rope, or I'm looking for a bunch of bottle caps. And, that's something I'd love to do here if we ever had the space. But
oh, that's fascinating. 25 years ago, we were fortunate enough to get to go out to Little Cranberry Island and have lunch with Ashley Bryan, the author illustrator. And one of the things that he did is he was really into creating sculpture using sea glass and sort of some of the found stuff that he collected from the shores. And I remember at the time being fascinated because it was such unique and special art.
Yeah.
And I can only imagine what a child or an adult creator could come up with. I mean, obviously, we don't want the stuff to wind up in the ocean.
Right.
But as we're cleaning it up, it's nice to find a way to repurpose it. And as you said, maybe we even get to the point that before it ever makes it there, we're starting to think with more creativity about how to use our waste. Imagine a space where curiosity drives innovation, where empathy fuels collaboration, and where learning feels less like a task and more like an adventure. My message isn't about adding more to your plate. It's about changing how you see the plate entirely. I'm Dr. Diane Jackson Schnorr, and through the power of purposeful play, I equip leaders, educators, and organizations with the tools you need to unlock creative problem solving, deepen human connection, and build resistant ecosystems of empathy and innovation. Attendees will walk away not just inspired, but empowered. with immediately usable strategies to spark curiosity in teams, to lead with empathy, and to infuse learning into their everyday cultures. You'll learn how play isn't child's work, it's the secret weapon of the world's most effective leaders and change makers. This is not a feel-good talk that fades by Monday morning, it's a movement, a shift in how we engage people, solve problems, and lead meaningful change. My talks and workshops are shaped by decades of experience in education and a transformative message that connects across sectors. Whether your audience is corporate, educational, or nonprofit, they'll leave ready to rethink what's possible, both personally and professionally. Because when we learn and lead through play, we don't just change organizations, we change the world. Check it out at drdianeadventures.com. If you were to have a unlimited budget and somebody said you can have your dream project, where would you want to go next?
Oh, that's a great question. I mean, there's like lots of things. One thing we'd like to do more of, which is not as marine debris related, I'd like to do more work. We've just started like a little bit of work analyzing some of our microplastic samples to see if we can figure out where like those foam pieces are coming from. So I'd love to do more of that. As far as research, it's kind of been a long-term goal to do more research cruises. So right now we do collect most of our data on whales from actual whale watch boats. So we're going out there and we're kind of at the mercy of, how far the boat can go in 4 hours and stuff like that. Lately, we've been chartering boats and doing a couple research cruises a year. So they're all day. We can go wherever we think the whales are going to be and collect a lot of data. It's definitely something we'd like to do at some point. I suppose if we had unlimited amount of money, we'd have our own boat and go out every day if we could. But right now, we're hoping just to partner with more boats that might charter or let us go out on their boat to do that. There's a lot of whales that are getting missed out there in terms of data collection just because people aren't out there all the time. So we went out a few years ago, one of our very first research cruises. We went out on Easter Sunday. It was this cold but crisp, clear day. And on that trip, we saw 4 North Atlantic right whales, which is a good percentage of the population, since I think the estimate now is something like 360 or 70 individuals. And that was amazing. They had been in an area that nobody knew that they had ever been in the spring before. So it just opened our eyes to all that information that's out there just waiting to be discovered still, even though we've been studying whales, or people have been studying whales since the mid-70s. So
that's incredible. What still brings you joy about doing this work?
I think just getting people excited. We had our co-founder and I did a presentation this morning for the UNH Marine docents, who are pretty knowledgeable people. A lot of them are retirees and they go through this docent class and they want to become educators. But they were just this wonderful audience, and we just throw out a whale fact, like something I say all the time and I don't think twice about, but they'd be like, "Oh my gosh, that's so cool." I think just how whales, and that's one of the reasons why we started doing, Diana and I always had an interest in whales, but it's just whales are such a natural hook for people to get them excited about the ocean. And I think most people don't realize how many whales are right off our coast. During the summer, you could go out 4 or 5 miles on a boat and see a whale. You could see a 65-foot long whale, which is just crazy. And I think there's just so much more to be discovered, but there's also so much more potential. Just in our short time, we started to see more like people bringing their own bags to the grocery store, and we go into a classroom and every kid has a reusable water bottle on their desk, where they didn't 20 years ago. So we are seeing really slow progress. So that gives me hope. And yeah, I think every day is just like different and exciting.
All right. I want 3 of your coolest whale facts.
Oh boy. Okay. Coolest whale facts. Let me think.
And maybe coolest wasn't a fair thing, because what would be coolest to me might not be to you. So
yes.
3 things that you like to share about whales. How about that?
Yeah, I mean, I think we talked about photo identification, and I think one of the amazing things, so I used to work on a whale watch boat like several days a week, at one point 7 days a week during the summer. And as our organization has grown, my role has evolved more into like an actual executive director, which means I'm sitting at my desk most of the time and doing fundraising and stuff like that. So I first started whale watching in the 90s. Actually, my very first whale watch was when I was a junior in college. I was up here working in the White Mountains doing a forestry study and went on a whale watch with my mom. And on that whale watch, we saw this whale named Little Spot. And just a few years ago, we were out on a research cruise and we saw Little Spot. So this is
Wow.
more than 20 years ago. And kind of same thing, I fill in on whale watches now when they need somebody's on vacation or something like that. And when I was whale watching all the time, we'd see a few, familiar whales like pinball, owl, and clamp. They all have names that the scientists give them. And oftentimes, if I'm just filling in like twice a summer, at least one of those days I go out and at least one, if not all three of those whales are out there. So, it's like the Gulf of Maine is 30,000 square miles. There's probably 6 or 7 different feeding areas they could feed in that are hundreds of miles away from us. And they happen to be in this area right when I'm on the boat. And it's just kind of cool. Like I worry about them and all the threats to them. But then on the other side, you see like how resilient they really are.
How long
Which
can
is,
whales
pretty
live?
cool. We think 75 to 100 years. So.
Oh, wow.
And actually, that is a cool fact that the longest living species we think is the bowhead whale. And there's bowhead whales, they think, that are swimming around out there that are more than 200 years old.
That's incredible.
Yeah.
That's so cool. I mean, and there are so many interesting books about whales. There's like Whale Fall and, just I love whales. So I'm glad that you're able to give us some of that. If people want to get involved with you, want to donate, want to volunteer, want to bring you in to educate, where should they go?
Yep. Just go to our website, which is blueoceansociety.org. And our phone number is on there too if you want to call us. And we do have like program booking forms, we have volunteer applications. We're looking for volunteers for all kinds of things from, just helping one time at a beach cleanup to serving on our board or events committee or helping with mailings in the office. So if you want to get involved, there's lots of different ways that you can do that.
Perfect. And then my last question for today is what currently brings you hope? And you kind of touched on it earlier, but.
Yeah. Actually, the other thing I meant to mention with getting involved, we do have an Adopt a Whale program too. So you can adopt one of our local whales and learn about it year long.
Yay.
But what gives me hope? Yeah, there's lots of things. There's, a lot of people out there concerned and trying to do the right thing, by this planet and by the marine life. And a lot of, scientists that have been working on these problems for years and years. And they're not giving up on these species, even though like with the North Atlantic right whale, they're so critically endangered, but we are making positive strides, which is great. So, and the interest in our work and volunteering just continues to go up. So, we've done all these beach cleanups and I was just showing a graph this morning where the trash that we're finding is going down, but the volunteer numbers are going up. And it's just like consistent lines from year to year. So we had over 4,000 volunteers just participate in beach cleanups last year. And that's only on about 30 miles of coast. So, and you take what we're doing and all these volunteers, and this is happening all over the country and all over the world. So hopefully that gives us all hope and reason to just keep making whatever little changes we can, because it does make a difference.
Jen, thank you so much. I have loved getting to know you a little bit better, and I've loved learning more about the Blue Ocean Society. I will make sure I drop those links in the show notes because I encourage people to get involved in your mission. It's a good one.
Thank you so much.
You've been listening to the Adventures in Learning podcast with your host, Dr. Diane. If you like what you're hearing, please subscribe, download, and let us know what you think, and please tell a friend. If you want the full show notes and the pictures, please go to drdianeadventures.com. We look forward to you joining us on our next adventure.